Hi, you're a React or React Native developer, and you know how challenging it can be to manage data between the UI and server. Sometimes your app needs to display a dynamic UI and can't always wait for the server's response. In such case, you might consider using optimistic updates. They can be incredibly useful in scenarios where immediate feedback is key. Let's take a closer look at how they work. Here's a to-do list app where completed items are marked with a strike-through effect, like here. Right now, when I click on an item, it gets marked as done. But there is a noticeable delay before the strike-through appears. That's because we are waiting for the server's response to update the UI. This approach ensures consistency between the UI and the server, but it's not great for the user experience. Delays like this can make the app feel unresponsive. The code is quite simple. When I click on an item, it calls this toggle done function, which is a mutation query where the function calls the API, and when it receives a success response, it invalidates the query. By consequence, the query will request again all the items and will show the UI with the new state. How do we fix this UI glitch? As a user, I don't want to wait around 1 second between the click and the feedback. This is where optimistic updates comes in. The idea is simple. We assume that the request to the server will succeed, and we update the UI even before the request. So the UI will reflect immediately the final state before the server confirms it. There are several ways to implement this. Let me show you one example. Here is the mutation function. What I want to do here is to update the state here before the API call. This state should look exactly the same as if the request succeeded. To do this, first I will grab the item. I can do like this using the find. I will create a copy of this item with the done toggled like this, and I will create the new list. So I have here a list with the final state that we want to update the UI. To update the UI, I can use the query client and use the set query data. This function requires the query key and the new data. The new data is just the new list. This should be enough to have the new state we desire. So yeah, we have an immediate feedback now. Here I can show you guys how it looks on the server. So when I click, the item is marked as done, and 1 second later, the server receives this information. There are some details that we need to pay attention. One of them is what happens when I click on the items in a short period of time. So take a look. So you can see that items behave unexpectedly sometimes. What's going on here? This is an illustration of a common workflow. We have the browser here and the server here. When the user clicks on the item, browser will request to the server to mark that item as done, and server will reply. Then the browser will request all the items, and server will reply with all the items, so that we will be sure that everything is synchronized. If we click on two items with enough interval of time, we will have the same workflow twice. The problem is that with some specific intervals of time, we might have some overlap between those flows. In this part here, we may have some inconsistent state. So how to fix this? One simple way to fix is to cancel any query that is being requested here. We can do that by using this query client and cancel queries. With that, those overlaps won't be a problem anymore because we will just ignore this response here. So it will look something like that. So far, we talked about successful requests, but sometimes we may have some errors. Here, for example, I put a simulation of an error, and let's see how the app will behave. So I click the item, and I have an error here. So this is where we have an inconsistent state, because the item is marked as down here, but the server couldn't get this information. So let's check what will happen when I get a successful request here. So for example, so far all those 3 requests didn't work, and the item 4 I could make it work. So this is now showing what the server looks like. One simple way to fix this is to always invalidate the queries after any request, doesn't matter if it worked or not. So instead of using onSuccess, I will use the onSettled property. Let's find out. I click on an item here, and it worked fine, so everything's nice here. Let's click on the second one, also worked. Let's click on this one, also worked. The number 4 didn't work, so what happened is that it rolled back the previous state. Be careful to always synchronize what's in the server with the UI state. The key question is, when should you use optimistic updates? A simple rule of thumb is to use them when errors won't have a significant impact on the user experience. For example, if marking an item as done fails, it's not a big deal. The user can simply try again. However, using optimistic updates for critical actions like creating new items isn't a great idea. If the request fails here, creating an item, the user could lose the item entirely, leading to confusion or frustration. Thanks for watching, and I see you in the next video.